Thank you for listening to IFES on Elections. I'm Laura Osio. Since April 2010, Kyrgyzstan has made headlines with the protests that toppled President Bakiyev, the transition to the current government of President Otunbayeva, and the referendum that established the country as the first parliamentary system in Central Asia. Anthony Bowyer, IFES Program Manager for the Caucasus and Central Asia, tells us why all eyes are once again on Kyrgyzstan as it heads towards general elections on October 30th. This October, Kyrgyzstan will hold presidential elections under a parliamentary system for the first time. What could this election reveal about the country?
I think this election can reveal the degree to which progress has been achieved since the 2010 events, starting with the April Revolution, the second in 5 years to overthrow a president of the country, followed by the tragic events in June of that year, which involved the ethnic clashes between ethnic Uzbeks and Kyrgyz in the south. In the same month, of course, we had the referendum for the constitution, which established Kyrgyzstan as a parliamentary republic, the first of such kind in Central Asia. In October of last year, so roughly a year ago, we had what has been considered by the international community to be a very successful parliamentary election, in which 5 parties were elected to the new parliament. They have struggled in that time to form a coalition, and there have been elements within these parties who have called for the dissolution of the parliamentary system. And I think that this is something that we need to watch going forward and how it's manifested in the election for president.
It would appear that Kyrgyzstan is on the path to becoming a more robust democracy. What are the possible stumbling blocks on this path?
Kyrgyzstan is, first of all, still feeling the effects of the tumultuous events of 2010. Not only the aforementioned political transition, but the ethnic issues and disputes that have simmered since June of last year and continue to do so. In the aftermath of those, there have been a series of trials in Osh and other regions in the south. And those found guilty of perpetrating the violence have been predominantly and overwhelmingly Uzbek, whereas we know that the group that suffered the most in those events were the ethnic Uzbeks themselves, leading to charges that perhaps the courts have been biased in their findings and through these trials. So the ethnic question is a very real one for Kyrgyzstan moving forward. In fact, there were local elections scheduled for the 9th of October. Those were recently postponed by presidential decree, considering the fact that many of these elections were to have taken place in the south, and President Otunbayeva felt to hold the elections on the 9th ahead of the presidential vote may be disruptive, as they carried a certain tinge of anxiety and perhaps disruptive elements that may serve to spoil the presidential vote. Aside from those issues, Kyrgyzstan is mired in an economic crisis, one that is not new to the country, but one that continues to assert itself in many ways, whether it be the issue of WTO status and the relationship with its neighbors on cross-border trading, to the vast number of labor migrants who are currently outside of the country in places such as Kazakhstan and the Russian Federation, of course. Kyrgyzstan is also pressured by its neighbors politically, chief most among them, the Russian Federation, which exerts a tremendous influence on the country, as does Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan.
We really don't know who will win this election. What are the possible scenarios?
It's quite correct. It's interesting in that, first of all, there's not an incumbent in the race, or at least a strongly preferred candidate, such as it has been in the past. There are a number of candidates, including the Prime Minister, who are running, who have general name recognition and a degree of popularity, though none over 40%, according to current polling data. It's almost certain that there will be a runoff in this election, a second round, which likely will pit the current Prime Minister, Mr. Otunbayev, against a candidate, possibly one from the south. As we know, the 2 parties most prominent in the south, Atatürk and Butun Kyrgyzstan, both have candidates running in this election. Atatürk, of course, was the party which received the most seats in the parliamentary election last year. It's quite possible that in a second round, those parties and others predisposed to their interests, may in fact support the remaining candidate to challenge Mr. Otunbayeva, creating a very interesting scenario in which the Prime Minister may not prevail. Another interesting question to mention is that, as we know in this system, the Prime Minister is the stronger position in the government of Kyrgyzstan than the President. Why then would Mr. Otunbayeva seek essentially what is a lower office, that of President, rather than seek to remain in his current posting of Prime Minister? I think it raises the question in terms of what are the intentions of candidates such as Mr. Otunbayeva and others with regards to the presidency vis-a-vis this new parliamentary system.
Thank you, Tony. For more IFES on elections, please visit ifes.org.